I welcome you all to this webinar on the occasion of the Earth Day. The Earth Day theme 2023 is Invest in Our Planet. This year's Earth Day theme is designed to persuade businesses, to persuade governments, and to persuade citizens around the world of the need to invest in our planet. To invest in our planet for what? To improve our environment and to give our descendants, future generation, a better and a safer future. The question is, when we are talking about to improve our environment, is it like to improve it from its pristine condition, from what it was, or just to restore its pristine condition? We know that for various regions, we have degraded the environment of the earth, and that's why we are facing many adversaries. And COVID-19 pandemic is one of that. We know that there is a Malthusian formula, a Malthusian law, which says that there is an increase in population, which is proportionately more than the way we are increasing our food supply. But to increase our food supply and to meet our increased demand of the world, to increase consumption, we encroach the environment, and there is an imbalance in the globe, in the earth, and that's why we are kind of like facing the challenges for our planet, and we are trying to restore our environment. And obviously, we are, exploiting the earth to meet our present, to meet the consumption need of our present generation. But the question is, are we kind of compromising the benefits and welfare of the future generation? And that's why we're saying, like, to give our descendants a better and safer future. So whatever condition, whatever consumption and welfare we are maintaining in the world, the question is, we want our future generation to enjoy better life than us. But already we are concerned that they may not be able to sustain what we are consuming. And that's why when we are talking about sustainable development, sustainable consumption and welfare, we are, kind of like the picture we see, it's glowing. And that's why I'm saying, like, we have to, kind of like preserve the environment. We have to restore environment, and if we can keep its pristine condition, if we can go back to the original condition, then I know that our future generation, with technological enhancement, they can enhance their consumption and welfare. They can have a better life, and also they can have a safer future. I'm sure that Dr. Mohammed Israr, he will make a good presentation today, and he will eye-open of us, and then he will give some policy suggestions to the need for the at least for the people of the globe, what we need to do in near future. And also from that, we'll try to have some policy suggestions from the for the Asia Pacific countries, for the CLCs. Let's welcome Dr. Mohammed Israr for his presentation. Dr. Mohammed Israr, it's to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Professor Halaluddin, Hurain Jannat, and all the participants. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. As Hurain Jannat mentioned, that basically we were supposed to celebrate the World Earth Day on 22nd of April, but today is 18th April, and we are just supposed to celebrate it because there are Eid holidays in most of the countries. So first of all, I'm thankful to Dr. Halaluddin for making an insight that how we are supposed to conserve the uh, our environment, our earth, and our planet for the future generations. He mentioned about the Malthusian theory that the population is increasing, but correspondingly, the food is not increasing at the same momentum. And ultimately, we will be facing shortage of food, and then most of the countries will be food insecure. So I will try my level best to highlight upon all these issues pertaining to preservation and conservation of the Earth planet, and how we can go for investment and how we can make it more sustainable for the future generations. So I'm going to share my screen and then I will share the presentation accordingly. So is the screen visible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is shared. Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. So today we are discussing the World Earth Day, excuse me, that is to be celebrated on 22nd April, but today is 18th April. And we want to ensure the happy Earth, which is our planet. And basically we are deriving most of our facilities like food, water, and shelter from Earth. So there is a dire need that we should protect and we should conserve our planet. This will be the sequence of my presentation. Just shortly, I will dialect upon the history of our day, that when it started, then the theme for 2023, then importance of the Earth Day, then the investment perspective in Earth planet, and how we can make it a happy planet. And then I will correlate the Earth health with agriculture sector, because we are talking of food security and the future generations sustainability. So I will be focusing on agriculture sector and food security. Then definitely climate smart agriculture and Earth planet, because most of the countries are faced with the menace of climate scenario, and floods are occurring, heat waves are there. Similarly, drought and stress conditions are faced by most of the countries. So how we can realign our agriculture and food security in the changing environment. Then I will discuss about the investment in food and agriculture innovations in the context of Earth health, protection of marine life and ecosystem, because marine life and ecosystem, they are also making a part of our food chain. Then water and energy saving practices and reduction in plastic pollution and investment in peace. And then goals for achievements to ensure the planet health. So this is the sequence and the scheme of my presentation, which I will follow in next 40-50 minutes. As far as the history of Earth's Day is concerned, it is an annual celebration which gives us a reason to celebrate and honor our planet, because we are supposed to take care of our planet. And if we go for over exploiting the resources which are there in the planet, so I think we will make it non-sustainable for the future generation. And even we will be facing scarcity of water, food, and many other natural resources which we are deriving from the Earth planet. This day serves as a helpful reminder of a message to review the impact on our environment, and also recommitment to save our planet through global support. Today, we are celebrating Earth Day. This is for the memorandum which reminds to the member countries, to all universe and all people, that they are supposed to go for recommitment, that this planet has to be saved and it has to be judiciously and rightfully exploited, so as we can meet our demands and the future generation can also meet their demands. In late 1960s and 1970s, you know that most of the American paid little attention, and the environment was badly damaged because fuel was extraordinarily used in the automobile and there were industrial emissions, but no one was there to take care of the environment, because they were unaware that they are polluting the environment, which will be having the side effects on the ozone layer eruptions, which will ultimately led to the increase in temperature and also changing the precipitation patterns, and then the climate scenario will be totally changed. So the Americans were not taking care of the pollution. So some of the Americans who were cognizant of this issue, they saw that oil was spilling in the sea while it was being transported from different countries, and there was industrial pollution as well as loss of the wilderness, deforestation, and extinct of the wild species. Because the temperature got raised in the species of the forest trees, they were extincting. Beside that, most of the wild life species, they were being damaged. So keeping in view all these aspects, beside that, dumping of toxins and pesticides, as well as the toxic waste into streams and rivers, led to these gentlemen that they should think on the restoration and the promotion and conservation of the planet. So the true founder of early Earth Day are Mr. John McConnell and Gaylord Nelson, a US Senator from Wisconsin who proposed and organized the first Earth Day in 1970. So these were the two gentlemen who proposed that in 1970 to take care of this pollution and the oil spill in the streams. And beside that, which was going to have the damage on the marine life and also dumping of the pesticides. So they created an awareness amongst the people, and they decided that Earth Day should be celebrated so that the people should have the idea that why they are supposed to take care of the Earth planet. So thousands of schools, as a result, on 20th April, 20 million Americans took up the environmental cause and protested. So this was the first day in 1970 that most of the Americans started agitation that this pollution has to be stopped. So they also accompanied a number of thousands of school children, college boys, university students, and they participated at the first Earth Day on 20th April 1970. Although the participants were having peaceful demonstration in favor of the environmental reforms, that there should be proper law and regulatory framework so that it could be observed, which could ensure the protection of the earth. Now, the theme of Earth is decided every year, and the message which we are giving in the theme, that is to motivate the people to go for implementation of that theme. So the theme which has been decided in 2023 for this year, that is the theme, invest in our planet. Now, we will think that what sort of natural resources we will have to conserve so that it could be more sustainable for the present generation as well as for the future generations. So we will talk about the investment, that how this investment is possible and how we can make this planet very viable for our sustainability. We know that Earth gives us food, water, and shelter. It is necessary to maintain the natural assets of the Earth to continue life on the Earth. You know that most of the crops, especially the staple food crops, fruits and vegetables, they are raised on the Earth. Then Earth is having the surface water, then we are having the groundwater. And beside that, there are streams of water which are used for irrigating these crops and plants, which could ensure the productivity to feed the human beings as well as also provide the feed to the livestock. So it is necessary that we should take care of this natural asset, and it will ensure that the life should be continued on the earth and it should be sustainable. So we must invest to save the planet, and it could be judiciously used by ourselves and also for the future generation. We can start it on 22nd April, which is the World Day, and all of us, we are supposed to have a commitment that what sort of new initiative we will take in the following years so that it could be productive in terms of the earth restoration, and it could be beneficial for the future generations. So the first Earth Day led to the creation of United States Environmental Protection Agency and the passage of Clean Air, Clean Water and Endangered Species Act. So you know that when the people went for agitation under the leaderships of the two senators, it led to the development of Environmental Protection Agency in US, and also the regulatory framework which were related to clean air, clean water, and protection of the endangered species which were becoming extinct due to pollution of the chemicals and oil spill or the acid rains. Because in most of the industrial units, either rubber tires were burned or some toxic materials were burned, and it led to the release of carbon dioxide and chlorine in the air. And ultimately, when these gases mixed with the water, it led to acid rain in the form of sulfuric acid and hydrochloric acid. So in order to protect the acid rains and to ensure clean air, and also to reduce the chances of damage to the ozone layer, these environmental laws were promulgated so as to ensure that there should be proper mechanism which could be followed to have the safe earth. In 1990, the Earth Day went global, and it mobilized 200 million people in 144 countries. So we are sure that now most of the countries of this world, they are celebrating Earth Day, and they are having the commitment in terms of SDGs that either they will go for clean water, for zero hunger, for poverty alleviation. So all these SDGs are somewhat related to the good health of the soil and earth and our planet. In 1995, President Bill Clinton awarded Senator Nelson a Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest honor given to civilians in the United States for his role as Earth Day founder. So I mentioned in the start of my presentation that Nelson was the person who organized the people, who motivated the people against environmental pollution. And in 1995, in return of his services for the protection of soil, he was awarded by President Bill Clinton. In 2010, on the 40th anniversary of Earth Day, the Earth Day Network launched Billion Acts of Green. Participants were asked to register their acts of green and state what they were doing to protect the environment. So you know that in 2010, on the 40th anniversary, the people were motivated that they should identify some of the acts. So a number of billion of acts were identified by the people at individual capacity, at the organizational level, at the institutional level, that they will go for implementation of those green acts, which will ensure that the earth will be more safer for the future generation as well as for themselves. By green acts, we mean that we will have to make our houses energy efficient, we will have to make our offices energy efficient, then we will have to segregate the garbage at the household level, at the office level, and then we can think of the recycling material as well as for the trash material, and some of the household waste can be decomposed into compost, which can be used as a natural fertilizer. So Billion Acts contain a number of initiatives, like it might be the sprinkler and drip irrigation system to use the irrigation water efficiently. So these are all actions which lead to the protection and conservation of the natural resources. By April 2022 and 2012, 1 billion acts had been recorded by the people of the world. So today we are sitting together, and we will also have to commit that some of the actions at the individual level or at the organization level, at the country level, we are supposed to incorporate in our initiatives so that the planet can be conserved for ourselves and for our future generation. Either that might be the less use of pesticide, less use of fertilizers, and efficient utilization of water at our houses, and efficient water and recycling of water. So these are some of the actions which I just mentioned, but there might be a number of actions, and each individual can contribute their actions in terms of its delivery to the societies, which can be of help and benefit to the society. So investing in a planet does not mean investing only in gold, silver, business, real estate, and diamonds. Rather, now we have to invest to save our earth. It is not necessary to invest only by putting money, but in its place, we can also invest our precious time, energy, effort, and knowledge. So generally, by the term investment, we mean that we will have to put some money, gold, silver, just to flourish our businesses. But here, this is the real business, because if we want that the natural resources like water, soil, and the groundwater, similarly the air, if they could be conserved and they could be rightfully exploited and rightfully used, I think not only we will be ensuring happy country, but also a happy generation and happy health as well as happy mind. Because you know that in most of the countries, like happiness has been determined as the real term of growth. Like in Bhutan, they considered, like in most of the countries, GDP and GNP, gross domestic product and gross national product, they are considered as the development of the economy. But in Bhutan, they have considered happiness, GNH, gross national happiness, as their factor of development. Because if more people are happier in the natural environment and they're having good health, less diseases and less exposure to toxicity, I think that is the real happiness, and we are supposed to make investment in that area. Now, how we can make Earth happy? If we focus on the following initiatives, I think we can ensure that the Earth could be more happier, like invest in food and agriculture innovation. We should protect marine wildlife and ecosystem, climate change, save water and energy along with it, reduce plastic pollution, and invest in peace. Because all these are the important factors, and if we focus on all these areas, I think we will be on target, and hopefully in a couple of years, we will ensure that we have addressed the food security issue and the SDG 2, which is the zero hunger. And then ultimately it will lead to poverty elevation, because most of the people will be having access to sufficient and nutritional food. So I think for that matter, we will have to go for investment and introduction of innovations like drip and sprinkler irrigation in agriculture system. And then definitely we are talking of the marine life, wildlife and ecosystem, because they are the species in the natural habitats. And if we pollute the habitat, ultimately the marine life will be endangered, wildlife will be endangered, and they will be extinct very shortly. So once we are using fertilizer and pesticides, so that should be properly drained out of the fields, but not mixed with the freshwater stream, so that it may not having any negative impact on the marine life and the ecosystem. And climate change, you know that it's a phenomena, and most of the countries are faced with it. The havoc caused by the floods or by the water stress, and sometimes the rise in temperature, and as well as drought in most of the countries. They are the climatic factors, and for that matter, we will have to realign our crops, varieties and crop patterns, so that we can have ample production of the staple food crops, which can survive in the climate change scenarios. So I think that for that matter, most of the countries might be working on that, and they can develop the simulation modeling for next 10, 15 years to know that if there is rise in temperature and if there is change in the precipitation patterns, so they will have to realign some of the crop varieties which can sustain the adverse climatic conditions. And save water, by saving water, I mean that in most of the countries, we do have ample water. But if it is not judiciously used, I think then there will be scarcity, and the future wars will be on water. Because we are supposed to efficiently utilize water and raise more crops per drop of water. And energy efficiency along with that is very important. And as I mentioned that the pollution is also caused by the plastic. So plastic has also to be abandoned. And for that matter, alternate like material should be used which can decompose and which could be made part of the decomposed soil or decomposed organic matter, which can be used for the crop growth. And beside that, investment in peace is very important, because if there is no tranquility and peace in the world, there will be quells and harms, and ultimately it will lead to, like you all are aware of the fact that World War I and World War II, they brought um, poverty, and the people were not having ample to eat. So I think it is for sure that peace should be there, and then if there is peace, then we can go for investment and in all these areas. So as far as the agricultural practice can help, because it is very important that it sequester carbon in soil, decrease greenhouses gas emissions, and feed and fuel the planet. Because you know that agriculture is very important area, and if you are talking the food security and plants, either that is fruit plants or the crops plants or vegetables, they are important for the human consumption. So along with that, they not only meet the food and feed requirement of the animals and human beings, but also they go for sequestration of the carbon, and the carbon soil, the carbon in soil that is fixed, and it becomes the part of the soil which is available for the plants uptake. And also the greenhouse gas emissions, they are controlled by the agricultural practices. We know that soil is a critical resource. The way it is managed can improve or degrade the quality of this resource. You know that most of the agriculture crops, the medium is soil, although now in some of the countries hydroponics has been started and water is used as a medium for the plant growth. But in most of the countries of the world, soil is very important and a crucial resource, which is used for crop productivity. And if it is not properly managed and it is exposed to soil erosion, or if it is exposed to waterlogging, I think it will be not feasible for crop production and even for living. Because if the soil water is not there, it will not be a useful place to be lived. Then if the groundwater is overexploited, then there will be a need that we are supposed to go for recharge of the soil. Because if the soil moisture is over-extracted, it will not be able to raise more crops. So judicious use of soil is very important, and it has to be protected from the waterlogging and soil erosion. And if they are facing these menaces, they have to be controlled by either cultural methods, by mechanical methods, and by chemical methods. Despite the essential role that soil plays in human livelihood, there is a worldwide increase in degradation of soil resources due to inappropriate management practices and population.
I think someone is. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, please.
So thank you, sir. So you know that basically there is a huge influx of population, and the population growth is very high, especially in the South Asia. And ultimately, the housing units requirement is very high. So most of the people go to construct houses on developed and fertile lands. But that trend has to be changed, and we will have to judiciously utilize the marginal lands and the unproductive lands, and then we will have to switch over to high-rise plazas and flats, so that the housing demand could be met out. Because you know that in Egypt, they have started a program which is called the Young Graduate Program, and they have given about 5 acres of land to each graduate who is interested in farming. And then along with that, they are giving subsidies for development of the desert soil, which include facilities of irrigation, also other facilities for development of the livestock farms. So they have brought the desert soil under agriculture and farms, and ultimately they are addressing these issues. So it would be appropriate that most of the countries, if they are having any marginal land or unproductive land, they could be used for the building purposes and for meeting the housing units demand. To this end, specific attention is needed to be given to the management of soil organic carbon that helps sustaining crop productivity and mitigating climate change. So it is very necessary that we will have to go for addition of the organic matter are either the crop staples to be decomposed, which can increase the soil organic matter, and ultimately it is giving more productivity as compared to the soils which are not having the uh, crops, staples, as well as the uh, previous crops. So I think the soil organic matter carbon can be increased if we go for production and raising of crops, and ultimately it will be mitigating the climate change. As we know that 95% of our food comes from soils, and according to an estimate, 815 million people are food insecure. 2 billion people are nutritionally insecure, but we can mitigate this through soil. And how it is possible? We will go for judicious use of the soil, and we will have to go for multiple crop raising. Intensive agriculture has to be made. Either that will be the open agriculture practices or through tunnel forming or density cropping. So there are a number of practices, and in order to address the food insecurity and to meet the nutrition requirement of the huge population all over the world, we will have to go for increased crop productivity, and will also ensure maximum cropping intensity from the available soil. We know that soil holds 3 times as much carbon as compared to the atmosphere, and can help us meet the challenges of uh, changing climate change. As I mentioned, that soil is having good properties of holding the organic carbon, and if it could be improved through decomposition or addition of the organic matter, it can address the climate change scenario, because if there is more organic matter in the soil, it is having highest moisture retention capacity. There is less uh, moisture evaporation from soil, and then also there are more microbial activities, which ultimately lead to the more productivity of the soil, and ultimately the crop intensity is there and crop productivity is very high. We know that more than 33% of our soils are degraded, but we need healthy soils to grow healthy crops. As I mentioned earlier, that soils are exposed to waterlogging, salinity, drought. So certain practices like mulching, like smothering, and then addition of the organic matter and cover crops along with the major crops, so that the moisture available to the crops could be ensured. Because if the soil, open soils are not there, uh, but this way we can also control the weeds, the unwanted plants. We can conserve the moisture for other crops, and ultimately it couldn't be eroded and it couldn't be exposed to stress conditions. Healthy soil is the foundation for profitable, productive, environmentally sound agriculture system. So the bottom line is that once the soil is healthy, you will be more profitable, you will have more productivity, and it will be environmentally safe and sound for yourself and also for the future generations. The organic carbon content of soil is one of the key indicator of its health, and is a master variable that control many of the soil processes. Because as I mentioned, that it plays a very important role, that it increases the microbial activities, it increases the water holding capacity, and it also ensures the nutritional availability and nutritional status to the soil for more productivity. It is the organic carbon content of soils that largely governs their capacity to absorb, retain, and supply moisture within the soil, and to sustain active plant growth. Because you know that moisture is very important for the plant growth, because every crop is having its own crop water requirement. So in some of the countries, the people are raising high data crops which are having more crop water requirement. But if there is scarcity of water, then we will have to switch over to some other efficient crops which can survive, which can raise on less moisture. So that might be the short duration crops like fruits and vegetables, and they will not be having more requirement of water, and that water could be saved for the other crops, and also we can increase more productivity. Every gram of carbon in the soil can retain up to 8 gram of water. So this is the proportionate ratio, that if we are adding 1 gram of carbon, it is having a ratio of 8 gram of water retention. So it is very important that our soils should have the organic carbon content. Soil organic carbon is the basis of soil fertility and play a key role in soil health through biological, physical, and chemical functions. As I mentioned, that microbial activities are very high and the structure of the soil is improved. It is more pulverized and the root penetration is very good in the soils having organic content, and then the chemical functions like the availability of nutrients is very high. Soil carbon help support a healthy balance of nutrients, minerals, and soil microbial ecologies, improving soil fertility. It improves the soil fertility, and the microbial ecology is also improved, which in return ensure the availability of nutrients and minerals. Either that is the atmospheric nitrogen, like for example, in case of rhizobia, which is one of the bacteria, it fixes the atmospheric nitrogen because the atmosphere contains 78% of nitrogen, which is free nitrogen, and it reacts through the rhizobium and develop nitrates and nitrites, which is ultimately the urea requirement or the nitrogenous fertilizer requirement is minimized through these bacteria. It also promotes the sustained production of essential food and fiber, as well as the capacity of plants and animals to resist diseases, insect infestation, and climate stresses. So these are all areas wherein the soil carbon plays very important role. Either we are talking of the fiber crops, which is jute, cotton, or something like else. So its production is increased, then the essential food items are increased, and also the animals which are feeding on the fodder crops which are raised on the soils having high soil carbon content. So they are also getting nutritional feed, and ultimately the productivity of the animal and livestock in terms of the milk production and meat production is increased. Our soils are low in soil organic carbon as they mostly fall under the influence of arid, semi-arid, and subhumid climates, and this is a major factor contributing to their poor productivity. You know that once you are having semi-arid, like there are less rainfall, or sometimes if there are subhumid climates, then they are having the negative impact on the soil organic carbon. Indeed, an increase of soil organic carbon stock by 1 ton carbon per hectare in root zone can raise the crop yield by 15 to 33 kilogram per hectare for wheat. This is a reference. And in case of rice, 160 kilogram per hour is for pearl millet, it's 13 kg for groundnut and 145 kg for soybean. So therefore, greater soil organic carbon content can result in high food grain production. So research have been conducted, and as I mentioned, that's not only going to increase the crop biomass, but also increasing the yield in terms of grains of these crops, which have been mentioned here. So this is basically a scale of carbon, soil organic carbon. Like if it is ranging 0.5%, it's very low, and 0.5 to 1%, it's low. But if it is ranging 1 to 1.5 ratio, it's medium. And if it is increased from 1.5%, it's optimum. So we will have to carry out the soil analysis, and we will have to determine that, keeping in view the soil organic carbon, we will have to decide that what crop patterns we are supposed to follow, because if there are some exhaustive crops which are ultimately depleting the productivity of the soil, that has to be followed by the other crops which are having, which can add carbon to the soil, and the productivity can be enhanced. So it means that the crop rotation, like exhaustive crops, should be followed by restorative crops, and then restorative crops can be followed by the exhaustive crops, or either we can go for intercropping of the exhaustive crops and the restorative crops, which are mostly the leguminous crops. Now, coming to the inputs and losses, like for example, the main inputs of the soil organic carbon to soil are from plant material, such as crop residues, plant roots, root exudates, and animal manure. if we want to increase the soil organic carbon, we are supposed to leave the stubbles and residues of the previous crop just to decompose in the soil, and it will aid to the soil structure and texture. And then animal manures should also be left there, and it should be not left, because if they are left and get decomposed, it leads to the increased microbial activity, and ultimately the soil is well pulverized. The soil roots are well penetrated, and it is having access to deep water for sucking. And if it is lost, then losses of soil organic carbon from soil are from decomposition by microorganism, erosion of surface soil, and offtake and plants and animal production. So sometime, as I mentioned, that if soil is exposed to heat waves, or if it is exposed to soil erosion, or if it is exposed to waterlogging, ultimately it will having negative impact on the plant productivity and the animal production. So when microorganism uses soil organic carbon in soil to obtain the carbon, nutrients, and energy they need to live, so the microorganism need carbon and energy. So they are also supposed to depend on the soil organic carbon. During the composition of soil organic carbon is lost from the soil because microorganisms convert about half of the soil organic carbon into carbon dioxide gas. Without continual input of SOC, these amounts stored in the soil will decrease over time, because soil organic carbon is always being decomposed by microorganisms. As I mentioned, that it's basically a symbiotic process, that the microorganisms need carbon for their survival, and ultimately we are supposed to include the plant residues and also add decomposed material, so that the plant health can be ensured through the healthy soil. And for that matter, as I mentioned, that exhaustive crops and restorative crops are either they should be sown together, or at least exhaustive crops should be followed by the restorative crops to increase the productivity and add soil organic carbon to the soil. Losses of soil organic carbon from erosion of surface soil can have a large impact on the amount of soil organic carbon stored in soil. This point was mentioned earlier, that erosion is having bad impact. Then this is because of the organic carbon is concentrated in the surface soil layer, a small particle that easily eroded. We know that soil organic carbon is at the top surface of the soil, and once the process of erosion occurs, either that is the wind erosion or water erosion, the surface soil is eroded, and ultimately the carbon is taken away, and the productivity is depleted. Erosion can cause the annual loss of 0.2 ton per hectare of soil from pasture, 8 ton from crop, and up to 80 ton per hectare from the bare fallows. Bare fallow are the soils which are not having any vegetation, and if they are kept exposed to water, so ultimately there will be huge erosion, and there will be more eroding process as compared to the crops which are to the soils which are having vegetation. Offtake of organic carbon in plant and animal production is also an important loss of organic carbon from the soil, and harvested materials such as grain, hay, feed, and animal grazing all represent loss of organic matter and nutrients from the soil. We know that the animals are consuming feed crops, they are grazing, and ultimately the organic carbon is also depleted. But on the other hand, if their manure is added, that is considered as an input, and it increases the decomposition process and ultimately lead to the higher microbial activity. The management practices that increase soil carbon sequestration and mitigation carbon loss includes less soil disturbance, more crop residues returned to soil, adoption of diversified crop rotation, more use of organic and biofertilizer, improved water and nutrient management practices. Soil organic carbon increases with minimum tillage. These are some of the practices. Like if we want to have less disturbance of the soil, we can ensure that more organic carbon is added. More crop residues, like for example, if there is zero tillage and the crop residues are not removed for the second crop, it ultimately get decomposed and the soil carbon is added. And then, as I mentioned, that we will have to follow the diversified crop protection. crop rotation, that exhaustive crops which deplete the fertility of the soil should be restored through the restorative crops which aid carbon organic matter. More use of organic and biofertilizer, it is essential, and improved water practices can ensure the availability of nutrients to soil. Now, this is a comparison that how tillage and non-tillage practices can increase the soil organic carbon. Like, for example, if we are not making any tillage, not using any equipments, and leaving the residue of the previous crops, ultimately the tillage, with no tillage, there will be high organic carbon. Then the total nitrogen that will be increased, then mineralizable nitrogen that will be increased. And similarly, all these nutrients, you know, that have been increased by 16.2%, 17.4%, and 9.9%. So there is a huge difference that we should practice zero tillage, or not go for implementation of the implements for exposing the soil to erosion and to sun rays, because if it is properly tillaged and pulverized, then there will be a high loss of moisture content and less microbial activity. So with non or zero tillage, you can increase the productivity and the content of the soil nutrients. Basically, an experiment was carried out here in our province, and you know that these are 5 jars, and the jar which is having less decomposed soil, they are clear. But if the activity is very high in these 2 jars, and it shows that the organic carbon in laboratory that was also practiced, and the microbial activity is very high with the grass source and the residues of the crops. So this is one of the experiments which was carried out, and I have referred on the top of the slide. Now, coming to another experiment which was carried out, that the soil which is having more soil organic carbon, it is on the left side, like it is more pulverized, it is more granulated, and the root penetration of the crops is very high, and the crops are having good access to soil water. While on the other side, the clods are there on the right side, and the root penetration will be a little bit difficult, and made easily through the microorganism. So the soil is having the micronutrient, the microorganism or the microbial activity is very high, that is having high content of the soil organic carbon. And if the soil is not having soil organic carbon, it will be clods and tight, and the root penetration will be a little bit difficult process. Now, coming to the crop residue, you know that sometimes we harvest one crop and the residues are left in the field. If these residues are left to decompose, I think it can aid to be like the organic matter, which increases the soil texture and structure, and ultimately it is giving a good impact on the next crop which is sown, because it doesn't need to apply more artificial fertilizer. Rather, it is having more decomposed natural manure, which is providing nutrients in terms of the soil organic carbon. Now, coming to the residue experience, like you know that the plus sign shows that the residues are there, and the negative sign shows that the crop residues are less. So the crops residue which have been left, they have good soil organic carbon, like 6.25. It is having residues minus residue 0.56. So there is a difference of 11%. So soil organic carbon can be increased, nitrogen can be increased, mineralized nitrogen availability is very high. So these are the nutrients which are having good impact on the soil health, and ultimately the production of the crops is also very high. So this is an other table which is also depicting the residues, non-residues. They are having good impact on the grain yield. Like you know that in grain yield, Without residue is 0.91, but in case of residue, it is 1.08. Similarly, nitrogen balance in case of residues is very high, that is plus 64, while in case of non-residue, that is plus 9. So if we are having any crops like mung bean, which is a leguminous crop, that is also adding, its residues are adding to the health of the soil. So in cropping pattern, we have to take care of that the restorative crops should be included in the crop rotation, because once the restorative crop is there, it is improving the soil health, and ultimately we will be having a good planet for our future generations. Now, this crop rotation, that one crop is followed by the other crops. Exhaustive crops are those crops which are having high uptake of the nutrients, and restorative crops are those crops which are adding nutrients to the soil. So exhaustive crops should be followed by restorative crops, and either we can go for mixed cropping and intercropping with the leguminous crops and exhaustive crops. Like this table shows that soil organic carbon, if wheat crop is grown on fallow land which was not having any other crop previously before plantation of the wheat, so the soil organic carbon is 5.24, while here in case of wheat mung, there was mung bean crop, and then wheat was followed after mung. So you know that the residues of the crop were there, so it was having more soil organic carbon. Similarly, the total nitrogen, that is high, mineral nitrogen is very high. So these are the nutrients, and we come to know that if the nutrients will be high if there are restorative crops before the exhaustive crops. So this is just a glimpse of the research which has been carried out at different places, and it depicts that the soil organic carbon can lead to more healthy soils. Now, this is the combination of some of the crops with the crop to crop or crop without any crop, and then with some fertilizer like nitrogenous fertilizer. Here, in the first instance, wheat has been followed by sorghum. Then sorghum is basically a leguminous crop, then sorghum plus nitrogenous fertilizer, and then mung bean. You know that here sorghum plus nitrogen, artificial fertilizer has been applied, and sorghum is also a leguminous crops. So the shoot biomass has been increased by 7.32%, and the grain yield has been increased by 1.90%. So this depicts that the inclusion of the restorative crops and the application of a small amount of fertilizer can aid to get more shoot biomass as well as the grain yield. So this is very important, and mung bean is also restorative crops along with the nitrogen. You can go for more crop productivity and good health of your soils. This also shows wheat and lentil plus nitrogen. In case if we are using nitrogen along with lentil crop for wheat crop, it is increasing high biomass as well as the yield will be high. So coming to this picture, like you know that the soil is well pulverized, it is well decomposed, and it is having high content of the organic matter. It is due to the reason that it is having high microbial activity, and the soil has been well pulverized, and ultimately if we are going for plantation of the crops, it will be having deep penetration of roots, and the water availability will be there, and the soil health will be more good as compared to other soil which are not having soil carbon organic matter. Here I'm showing you a picture like this is the response of sugarcane to organic fertilizer, which is same like we are talking. The crop which is having application of the organic fertilizer, it was having high sugar content, it was having good growth as compared to the field crops which were applied with the nitrogenous or artificial fertilizers. So response of the crops to organic fertilizer is very high because it increases the microbial activity, and ultimately the soil is well pulverized it, the decomposition process is very high, and ultimately the water nutrients are well available to the crops. Here, it is a raw sugar, and you know that it is called gold, and probably some of the countries might be using it for rum making and for other products. But this gold is of improved quality because they have used only the organic matter and without fertilizer, artificial fertilizer application. No coloring agent has been used, and it is having good production. It is a raw sugar which is used for the consumption by the local people. So effect of soil on properties, because you know this field is very well polarized. It is soft in structure. It is having darkish color because it is having high content of the carbon. So as I mentioned that the soil is loose, the crop root penetration is very high, the moisture retention capacity is good, and the soil structure is well improved. And ultimately, you need not to go for application of the fertilizer if you are having any residues of the previous crops. So this is basically a leguminous crops, which is flowed because it has attained the highest growth, and they have taken the crop yield. But ultimately, at the end, after fourth or fifth crop, they just run the flow, tractor flow, and the crop is made under the soil as a debris. And then water is applied and it gets decomposed, and ultimately the soil organic matter is added and it improves the soil health. Now, again, coming to zero tillage, like agriculture can enhance soil carbon sequestration by reducing the degree of soil disturbance and carbon turnover in wheat-based cropping system. Conversion from zero tillage to carbon tillage is resulted in net carbon sequestration rate. Like for example, if we are having zero tillage, the carbon sequestration will be high. Balanced application of fertilizer can also enhance the soil organic carbon. Then in India, agriculture contributes nearly about 18% of the total greenhouse gases emissions in the country, and crop residues burning is a potential source of greenhouses gases causing global warming. In India, an estimated 1.4 total ton grain crop residues are surplus, most of which are burnt in situ. The crop residues average contains 45. So I mean that if the crop residues are burnt, ultimately the green gas houses emissions will be high, and ultimately polluting your soil, but rather it should be decomposed in soils and it will aid to the soil organic carbon. Adoption of improved water management is also another area, like alternate wetting and drying, direct seeding of rice in place of submerged rice reduce are totally eliminated. It means that basically in most of the countries, rice crop is grown in puddled soil. But now practice have shown that even if we go for alternate watering of the rice field, we can ensure that in drought condition, in stress condition, the moisture content is supplied, then it will be having a good impact, and ultimately there will be high yield. So you know that in most of the cases, the people are using the flood irrigation system, but now water is becoming a scarce commodity and it is depleting. So we will have to switch over to good irrigation practices like drip and sprinkler irrigation systems. Now we are supposed also to invest in food and agriculture through innovative methods like using less chemical fertilizer, using fewer pesticides to reduce air and water pollution. If we want to ensure the earth health and having good production, like which is useful for the health, we are supposed to apply less quantity of chemicals, keeping in view the damage of the pest. Like for example, economic injury level and economic threshold should be taken into consideration, rather using indiscriminate pesticide, because some of the pesticides are having high residual limit effect. MRL value is very high, medium residual limit is very high, and ultimately it leads to carcinogenic diseases. So the time is that either we have to abandon the pesticides or use them very safely and judiciously, keeping in view the crop damages. And beside that, we can also go for introduction of the predator biological control methods, which can feed the harmful insects, like the other insects can feed on the harmful insects, and through biological making, through pest management practices is improved. When possible, to make susceptible to drought and erosion, this point was discussed that we are not supposed to over dry, because we are supposed to ensure that there should be moisture content on the soil, and it could be the sun rays could not directly hit the soil surface, because it increases the evapotranspiration ratio. And beside that, the others tree the erosion and cover crops also used for control of erosion purposes. So keeping in view these practices, we can ensure that the excuse me, soil health can be ensured. Making better use of the underutilized land, as I mentioned, that mostly in most of the countries, the fertile lands are brought under the housing colonies, and the real estate agents are converting them into residences. So I think each country is supposed to carry out the soil zoning in different areas, and then they should decide that which zone is suitable for which crop, and which area is very marginal land that can be used for the population for residences. So I think zoning is very important, and we should take care of this aspect by all of our countries. Now, coming to the marine life, like we are supposed to conserve water and use less water, so excess and waste water will not go into the oceans. The main dilemma is that in most of the countries, the fertilizer and pesticides are used on the crops, and then that contaminated water is ran out to the water streams, which is having marine life, and ultimately that is damaged. So I think there should be separate way out for the drainage purposes, and we should protect the distinct species of our marine life. We should reduce the pollutants, reduce waste that should not be flowed into the water. Like yesterday, there was discussion on the water, like pollution of the water. So the industrial waste and the field waste, they should not mix into the freshwater streams. And we should also shop wisely that in most of the cases, the plastic bags, they are used. We should go for the biodegradable material, which can be either made from the starches or from other material, which can be used for carrying out purposes. We should also use efficient vehicles, and we should reduce the vehicle pollution. But in most of the developed countries like Japan, now they are switching over to the solar run vehicles, and ultimately they are going to take care of the vehicle pollution, because they are not using any oil or petrol or diesel, and ultimately the emissions will be reduced. And we should use less energy, and for that matter, the other sources of energy, like the renewable energy sources, which is in terms of solar energy, hydro energy, that can be used in. But this way, we can also address the issue of the climate change. And we should also fish responsibly catch and release policy, because it is very, very important that in most of the countries, like even in Pakistan, some of the people, if they go for fishing, they are using nets, or either they are using sometime other chemicals for the fish catch. But in some of the developed countries, if we are go for recreational fishing, they have adopted the policy of catch and release. Like for fishing purposes, 4 or 5 fishes that are caught and then released, and just for amusement purposes, they go for recreational purposes. And we should also go for practice safe boating, because in motorized boats, they're expelling oil on the seashores and even on the water streams. So I think we should adopt the uh, safe measures, just we can avoid the pollution of water. Now coming to climate change, like uh, fuels, as I mentioned, that we have to switch over to hydropower and then solar power and wind power. So I think fossil fuels or reliance should be abundant, because it's leading to pollution, and ultimately the weather is badly affected, and the greenhouse gases emissions is very high, and it is impacting the ozone layer. Then we should also go for energy efficiency. Renewable energy sources should be exploited, and there should be sustainable transportation system, sustainable buildings, because we are using huge lights, and so LED lights should be used, or either the sun solar battery system can be introduced, and even the sunlight at that time that can be fully utilized, just to have the rooftop with sunglasses, and that light can be used for our use. Conservation-based solutions. So the ultimate aim is that we are supposed to conserve our natural resources, and we should also think of the better forestry management and sustainable agriculture system, because in most of the countries, forests are badly damaged. There is no work plan and no proper management practices are being carried out. So we should have to follow the good and improved forestry management practices. We should also go for the uh, agroforestry as well as for the social forestry, and also for raising of crops in our fields. Similarly, mangrove forest and wetland forest, they can also be a source of amusement as well as for the world requirement. And then sustainable agriculture is very important, because if we go for conservation-based solutions to have energy efficiency and sufficient sustainable transportation system, forestry management, and sustainable agriculture system, with these, we can ensure that our health will be safe, and to some extent, we can contribute that uh, it is useful and sustainable for the future generation. Now, coming to the water use, like using water saving techniques can save your money and divert less water from our rivers, bays, and statuaries, which help keep the environment healthy. It can also reduce water and wastewater treatment costs, and the amount of energy used to treat, pump, and heat water. Yesterday, we were discussing that there should be mechanism of the recycling of water, and there should be water treatment plants. So I think household water is used for treatment purposes, then industrial water can be used to be treated. So I think if the water is becoming a scarce commodity and the weather patterns are changing, so we will have to think on the alternate solutions. And then countries which are having resources, they will have to go for conservation through barrage dams to conserve the available water. Now coming to plastic, like most plastics are made from oil and gas, fossil fuels that contribute to climate change. About 4% to 8% of the world oil production is for plastic. You know that a huge amount of oil is used for plastic production, and most plastics are thrown away after a single use. By reducing your plastic use, you can also reduce your carbon footprints. So we know that we will efficiently utilize our fuel which is consumed in the plastic production. So we will have to switch over to biodegradable contents and biodegradable material, which decomposed and aid to the soil organic carbon. And ultimately, uh, war does not only cost human lives and cause widespread hunger, poverty, and suffering, it also hurt the planet. So we will have to work hard to ensure that there should be peace in all regions of the world. And UN, as one of the entity which is going to ensure that there should be no war and no catastrophe and the planet through man-made activities. So I think peace is very important, and if there is peace and tranquility, we will go forward, and especially in the South Asian region, we will have to develop the cooperative sort of friendship and working together for the restoration of our planet. So these are some of the actions which I have proposed, like get a recycled bottle. Like in America, according to one of the estimate, about 50 billion plastic bottles, water bottles are annually used, and they are not recycled bottles. And ultimately, the gasoline which is used on production of these bottles is 1.7 million barrels. So if we are having recycled bottle, I think we can reduce the gasoline consumption, which is used on the cycle on the bottles which is not recycled. And we also supposed to go for composting. At household level, we can go for segregation of our trash, like the plastic, recycled material, paper, and then the trash, which is like fruits and vegetable peels, which can be decomposed and can be added to the organic matter. Then scientific forest management, as I mentioned, that there should be proper work plan, and the mature trees should be identified. And then if there is any rotation management forest, then if any tree is cut and alternate, we are supposed to raise 5 to 10 plants so that the environment cannot be badly affected. Build bird houses or honeybees farms, because these are the natural flora and fauna. And if we provide the natural flora and fauna, then we will be having birds and honeybees, and ultimately our requirements will be met up. Establishment of the energy efficient houses, like the available solar light should be efficiently utilized. And if we are not having because on one hand it saves your resources, and on the other hand you will fully utilize the available solar light during daytime. Introduction of reusable grocery bags leads to nature enjoyment through investment and plan. Like as I mentioned, the plastic bags are used in grocery sector, and ultimately they are not decomposed. So we will have to switch over to material which can be decomposed, like either we can use the bags made of the cloth, and that can be used for shopping purposes. And with this way, with all these interventions, we can enjoy our planet, and we can ensure that it will be sustainable for our future generation. That's all from my side. And any suggestions, any comments, that they are welcome. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Mohammad Israr. It was very comprehensive, and especially the soil degradation part. I've learned a lot also from my plot of land, how to improve its quality and how to preserve it. There was one question at one point at the chat box, like when you were giving like 2 billion nutrition insecure people, and then you were saying more than 33% of our soils are degraded. So there was a question like, is it a country specific figure? That is it 1/3 of the land of Pakistan degraded, or globally 1/3 is degraded? There was a question at the chat box. Can you take it?
Actually, it's a global figure, and you know that in Pakistan also we are facing this issue, and especially in my province, we are having about 10.8 million hectare of land, but unfortunately we are only raising crops on 1.8 million hectares. So there is a huge difference, like there is cultivable wasteland and it couldn't be used. So similarly, in most of the countries, there is cultivable wasteland, it is not brought under the agriculture purposes. So if you are talking of the food security of the whole country and of the world, and it is second number SDG, that we will have to ensure the food security. So I think that most of the countries will have to look into their cultivable wastelands, and we will go for bringing it more under the cultivation and crops. So for that matter, either we will be making investment in the dams and barrages to make ensure the availability of water for raising that area. But in case of my province, like I'm having 1.8 million hectare of land, out of which almost 51% is irrigated and 49% is unirrigated. So I think if we want to fully exploit the unirrigated area, definitely we will have to think that there should be some water conservation practices like mulching, smothering, and either if there are some sources of water that could be efficiently utilized by introducing the efficient irrigation system like drip and sprinklers.
So, so you are saying like then when you say more than 30% of the land are degraded, soil are degraded, so it's globally, right?
Yeah.
So if it is globally, then there might be a like skewness, like say in developing countries, in least developed countries, that kind of soil degradation is I mean severe than developed countries, something like that.
Yeah. Sir, you are right, because I have been to South Africa, and South Africa is basically a water scarce country, and basically water is coming from Lesotho, which is a small country, to South Africa, and then from South Africa to Mozambique. So they're having cross water boundary arrangement, and from Lesotho to South Africa. So South Africa is paying for that water. And if water is coming to Mozambique, then Mozambique is supposed to pay to the South African countries. And there they have started this arrangement, like, for example, each farmer is having his farm, and then he's having water allowance from the water stream. Then that water is diverted to his field, and they're having reservoirs at their fields, and then they have introduced the sensor-based systems which detects that which compartment of his field is lacking less moisture. So automatically that sensors give a signal to the irrigation system, then that compartment starts. So you are right that there is skewness, and especially in most of the less developed countries like African and the South Asian countries, where we are having ample issues. So the skewness is very high as in the African countries and the Asian countries as compared to the developed countries. Thank you.
So I have another question, but I'll come later. Now I'm kind of opening the floor. So anybody has any kind of question, suggestions, feedback, please just raise your hand and then start talking. Okay. So if no question, or if I get chance, I have time, then I'll have one question later. So just the floor is open. Anybody, any question? Because this is a very interesting and important topic that we are discussing today. It's the question of our life of our planet in the long run. So floor is open. Any question from anybody? And today is 39, right? Number of participants. So excluding you and me, that's 37. Yeah. Yes, from Iran, right? Babak Nakhoda is from Iran. Yes, please go ahead with your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much indeed for your very nice presentation, very informative presentation, and beautifully addressed the main agricultural and global challenges which are threatening even the human life and the species, and put the species in danger around the globe. So we should use the resources more responsibility, and we need to take the measures, as you already beautifully mentioned in your presentation, to have a sustainable agriculture and sustainable food production, and also have our earth still green as always. So not to put the species in danger for agriculture and for food production. So I would like to mention about the organic matter. You already summarized the different procedures and different technologies and techniques to increase the soil organic matter, which is very important for sustainable crop production. But I would like also to raise this issue and the importance of the biochar technology in agriculture, and increasing the crop production and increasing the soil fertility and soil organic matter. because this is a new actually it's an old technology, but now with the new facilities and new technologies, now we can use the new techniques and new facilities to make the biochar from agricultural waste and the residues to increase the soil organic matter, not to harm the environment. And also to consider the climate resilient crops such as millet and sorghum to increase the sustainability in the harsh environments, and also in some areas that we cannot produce the crops, or they need more energy or more fertilizer, more pesticides to keep them produce more yield in a harsh environment. So we can go and shift to from the routine crops to the climate resilient crops towards the sustainable agriculture. And as you know better than me, this year is already announced by FAO and United Nations as the International Year of Millet. So they are good for human beings, they are good for human health, with so many beneficial effects on human health, and also they are good for the planet because they have lower footprints and ecological footprints, and also they are good for the farmers, especially in the region, because we are in the semi-arid tropics, which is very, very vulnerable to climate change, global warming, salinity, and some other adverse effects of climate change. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you, Babak, for adding the technology of biochar, and I fully endorse that biochar has a little but got momentum in most of the countries. And you rightly mentioned, like, for example, in some of the countries, the water is saline, and they have introduced the installation of the soil salination plants, water salination plants. And on one hand, that water, the salt is removed, and that water is applied for the fruits and vegetables for the short duration crops. And then the salt added water is used for raising of the crop, for the fish. And then ultimately that water is used for the raising of the halophytes, which are salt tolerant crops. So I think we will have to go for integrated approach, that we will have to introduce new technologies, which include biochar, the desalinization plants, reverse osmosis, and all these technologies, they are the need of the day. And I think with these introduction of technologies, we can address the food insecurity issues, which is the world facing. Thank you.
Anyone else? I see Shahbaz Hussain, Dr. Shahbaz Hussain. Any intervention from you, sir?
Yes. How are you?
I'm
Muhammad Hilaluddin.
Yes. Sir.
Let me just to apply this opportunity to welcome to see my ex-colleagues from CIRDAP, and also
Yeah, I know. I heard your name. That's why I was focusing on you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Actually, let me introduce myself to my colleagues from the different countries. This is Hussein Shahbaz, ex-director of the Pilot Project Division from CIRDAP, and also for as a 2 years, I was also in charge of the research division. I'm really happy to see all my colleagues and also our other participants coming from the CIRDAP member countries, as shortly we call them CMCs. Thank you very much. Really, Dr. Israr, it was a really interesting presentation made by you. We are so happy to what you said. Maybe we will just come for the mutual connection to get more experiences and details from your side. I'm really interested to make this communication, and I'm thank you for the CIRDAP as a platform. They are really just doing their own best to make the connection among the CIRDAP member countries, specifically for these topics in 2023. Just from my side, no comments. What I wanted to say that as a professional, or as a highly experienced the people, I can see here that just I have a comment. All of this discussion, just we are talking about our global or our Earth, that I can summarize in one sentence that we have to reduce the pressure on our earth. So pressure comes just from different aspects, producing less waste, just using less waters, I don't know, many things. So, and also producing, I can say, the less food. We are talking about the food security, but you know that more than 30% of the food products in the world are becoming waste. So if we reduce the waste food from the, we say that F to F, from farm to the fork, from farm to the kitchen, or from farm to the table, so we can reduce the pressure on our earth. Just I wanted to thank to everybody, and just requesting maybe CIRDAP to for the some other webinars to talk about this, how to we reduce the waste in crops and agricultural crops, and also food, which may not may, I can say, I'm sure that to help the reduce the pressure on our earth, just it is a kind of investment on our earth, and also it will what you say, bring the food security to many people. Just they are just they are facing problem on the from the food insecurity. Muhammad Hilal, thank you very much again, and also I can see Huri and Jannat, communication officer from the CIRDAP. I had a very great pleasure time in CIRDAP and also Bangladesh, and I used this, what you say, to travel to our CMCs all 6 years that I was there. Thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you, sir.
You have an open invitation to visit CIRDAP whenever you come around, and I hope to see you often in webinars in coming future.
Sure. Thank you very much, Hilal. Bye.
I see another Muhammad Ali. Are you willing to intervene? Muhammad Ali, right? Do you want to intervene? No? Okay.
Just Muhammad, sorry, just about the food, what do you say, that the reduction of the agricultural crops, or you may call it the post-harvest. I'm ready to make a presentation from our sides, if any, what you say this, if any plan. Thank you.
Anybody else? Our alumni from Nepal want to intervene? The question? No? Okay. If not, that we are almost at the.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir. I joined very later, so I don't have any remarks. Thank you, sir. Just I am listening and getting the knowledge. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Anybody else? If not, then I have one question that I said if I get time, I'll try to ask this question. The plastic pollution that you said, like plastic bags, right? Plastic materials, they are polluting. In Bangladesh, there used to be like a campaign to use jute bags instead of plastic bags. And at one point, it seems like there was a campaign and people was listening to something like that. And at one point, there was the focus was shifted to something else. And everybody is using again plastic bags. So plastic bags are cheaper, so it costs me less. It's like kind of like convenient to carry. So individually, I do care about minimizing costs. But I know that there is a social or global responsibility to avoid that kind of pollutive products. But the question is that there is we call in economics isolation paradox. Like if I buy a jute bag with a high price and everybody else is using plastic bags, what is the use of like for mine using like say costly jute bags? So in isolation, everybody is thinking like if everybody else is using jute bags, if I alone single-handedly use only plastic bags, it will not hurt the environment. Similarly, in the global arena, you see like I'm a small country. If I want to save, like, say, carbon emission, it will be costly for me. But when I see industrialist countries that are doing it, so if they don't stop it, then what is the use of mine reducing a little bit? Something like that. So how do you think, like, in case of like taking actions to save our Earth? And as you said, investment means like your awareness, doing certain things differently. So how to motivate people on private incentives to do that?
Thank you, sir, for a very nice and pertinent question. Basically, you know that each country is having its own policy, and they have the environmental protection laws and regulation, and beside that, there are environmental tribunals. So the environmental tribunals, they are supposed to go for imposing penalties and also even imprisonment associated to different actions. So in that case, I think the policy and regulatory framework of any country is very important, and its implementation is a challenge. So I think you are right that, for example, previously people in Bangladesh, they were using jute bags and then plastic bags, and again the plastic bags got the momentum. So I think for that matter, the government is supposed to go for massive campaign and also to create awareness that basically it's having long-lasting impact on the environment, and they are not degraded because they add to the soil and ultimately the cropping patterns and the soil health that is badly damaged. So I think for any such like activities, the government resolve and commitment is very important, that they should have to create awareness, they should have to create massive scale of the motivation even from the school children level. Like, for example, if we teach the school children and their parents at school level that how they are supposed to dispose of the leftover residues at their home. Like, for example, there should be segregation of the trash at the household level. Like, for example, there should be plastic bags and the glass bottles, which are recycled. Then there should be paper, and then there should be trash like which could be decomposed and added to the soil. So I think it's a holistic phenomena, and for that matter, then the environmental tribunals, they have to ensure that there should be stringent actions and penalties. So I think with the huge awareness and to change the attitude of the people right from the school level and from the household level, it's the responsibility of all stakeholders that we have to reduce this menace. Thank you.
You're saying stringent regulation by the state, as well as campaign for awareness. So that's all. Okay. And if there is no other intervention, we'll anybody here? Yeah. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Mohammed, just one comment. Just one information to our participants. You know that the Bangladesh was the first country in the world to ban the plastic bags in the country. It was in 2010. I kept the link in the chat box. Bangladesh was the first country in the world. I really appreciate my just second country.
Yes. Our participant from Nepal. Yeah. You can now.
Yes, sir. Just I want to add something. It is I'm totally agree with this with our respected professor. It is from the household level, and I want to add it is the behavior part also. The by law, the government enrolls the by law. This is one another part, but it is more than the behavior part. So from the childhood, we have to teach this is the plastic is the not reuse, and then it is very danger for soil and environmental. That's this is behavior part. If we carry small bag this and carry from the market something from that bag, it is I want to add that things. It is most than legal part, most than behavior is most important. Just that things I want to add. Thank you, sir.
So thank you. And also I see like Muhammad Ali Jirak, were you trying to intervene? Okay. If not, then and that's all. Thanks a lot, Dr. Israr. It was very refreshing and also like convincing and also very timely, your presentation. And I thank you a lot for getting time for this webinar. And I'll go back to Hurain Jannat. Hurain.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you again. Hope you will join with us in the next webinar also. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you all. Thank you.